Matthew Danko podcast. Don't call it that. I'm your host, Matthew, the Dr. Danko. Hey, folks. Well, this episode's ruined. No. It's been a while since I last did this podcast thing, but at least it's been less than a year, so that's improvement. And I'm joined once again by the lovely Jesse Pardee.
Hello.
Yeah. No. She's joining me, and I think she has an alright time doing these podcasts, but it definitely takes a while to get her in the chair to do them, as it were. But anyways, we're talking about something I know she's been dying to talk about for weeks now. Batman v Superman. You know how much I've been talking about it.
A lot.
A lot. That's putting it...
All the time.
All the time. It's just... Like, it was one of the biggest and probably most anticipated movies, apart from, like, Star Wars, because, Star Wars is generational. It has many different fans from the prequels to the originals back in the day, but Batman v Superman is the first time you see Batman and Superman on the screen together. And it's funny because although it's taken DC to get the two characters they've been making movies about since the 60s, it's 2016. So you would think that... I'm losing my train of thought here.
Wait, this might be a stupid question, but when you say it was the first time they were on screen, like not even like a cartoon form? Were they?
No, they've been in the cartoon form together. They even had a Batman-Superman movie done in the animated, like the Batman the Animated Series I'm always talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The Superman the Animated Series was around the same time, and they had a team-up movie together with the Joker and Lex Luthor being the other team in that movie. But this is the first live-action Batman vs. Superman movie, or Batman and Superman movie ever. And like I said, Warner Brothers has made both Superman and Batman standalone movies since the 60s with, well, I don't even know. I'd assume it was Warner Brothers. Adam West's Batman in the 60s. And then Michael Keaton, 89, forward, even to Christopher Nolan's Batman movies were done through Warner Brothers because they had the movie rights to those characters. But then you have Superman, Christopher Reeves in 74, I think. Forward, there was like 4 movies, and then he returned in 2006. He had a bunch of television shows, Smallville, Lois and Clark. So these two characters have been what Warner Brothers jumps to when they try to make comic book movies. And this is the first time they've been together. But the critics have not been kind to this movie. Right now it's the 5th of April.
Yeah.
The movie came out on March 25th, your birthday. And it's pretty much been the hot topic everywhere online. Like, I can't go onto Facebook without seeing some shit about Batman v Superman. Both good and bad. And we'll get into all that. But it was exciting for me to finally get to see my two... Well, Batman is really my favorite character ever, I guess. But it was cool to see them together for the first time. Now, you're obviously not a super comic book person.
I'm stupid.
No, you're not stupid. It's not really your thing. But you've shown some interest in at least Batman because of how much I talk about it. Mm-hmm. And no, that's fine. For the record, if you hear any noises throughout this podcast, it's because we're both coloring.
Yay!
It's It's the easiest way to get her to do a podcast.
That's sad.
No, it's just, it keeps you busy instead of just hearing me talk, which can put you to sleep.
And has,
yes. Bobby even said on the last podcast I did with them that he was listening to mine and it was putting him to sleep. Not because he was bored, but he was listening to it.
You have a soothing voice.
Yeah, like Dr. House. No.
His voice is not that soothing.
Well, he's just abrasive in his comments, I think. If he spoke softly and sweetly, it would be soothing.
I guess.
Anyways, I forget what the hell I was talking about. So yeah, you're not a comic book person, but this wasn't the first comic book movie you've seen.
No, we went to see Deadpool shortly before, which I really liked.
Yeah, I feel like Deadpool was more of the kind of superhero comic book movie geared towards someone like you.
Well, yeah, it was easier for me to follow without having read comics or followed the stories.
Well, Deadpool, to be fair, has only been around since the 90s. So you're not, I mean, with characters like Batman and Superman that have been around since 40s, early 50s. I always forget which one exists and which. I think Superman came first in 43. Batman came a little later. I should really know those things. But it doesn't matter. So yeah, you're not dealing with all the backstory and history and all the different iterations. There have been plenty of iterations of Deadpool, but to a much lesser extent. And the character itself is suited towards, I don't know, he's a bit of an anti-hero. And he breaks the fourth wall, which is a really innovative, I guess, thing for a comic book character. Like, he realizes he's a comic book character in a lot of his stuff. And he talks to the reader, which is really cool if you actually read the books. And he has different voices in his head. Like Frank
Underwood.
Yes. Another show that you got me into. Kind of. I've been popping in and out, but... So yeah, you enjoyed Deadpool because it was a character that you could understand more. It's fun. That movie was really fun.
Funny.
Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds nails that part. I mean, everyone is saying he is Deadpool.
Humor-wise, it was quite different from Batman vs. Superman.
That's true, because as we know, Batman vs. Superman really wasn't funny at all. But yeah, enough about Deadpool. That was another podcast I wanted to do, but it just kept getting later and later. We were both jumping around from Syracuse and Pittsburgh. It just didn't work out. But anyway, we're here talking about Batman v Superman. We'll start with what you thought about it. And for anyone listening, obviously we're going to get into some spoilers because I've tried to keep my opinions to a minimum talking to Jesse, but, you know, that's been quite tough. I've been trying to save it for the podcast. Yeah.
You've been keeping your opinions to a minimum?
A minimum of, you know.
I hadn't noticed.
Like 1,000 words an hour or something like that. But, yeah. But we'll get into some of the deeper things that are right and wrong with the movie. But we'll just start out with what you thought about the movie.
I thought that there was a lot going on.
Like, it was just jam-packed?
I couldn't quite tell which plot line to follow. Yeah, the closest, I felt like.
Well, I think that's understandable because although you understand that this is, I mean, again, you're not a superhero person, but Marvel, you know that they've been mapping out a universe and there's been all these different movies that connect to one another. This is DC's turn to do that.
Right.
It started with...
within the first 10 minutes of the film, we go into, I want to say 3 or 4 different time/places.
Yeah.
before we land on one that maybe we're going to stick with.
Yeah.
Which was a little jarring for me because I went in like, really pay attention and follow. Like, because I wanted to understand everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, my only other experience with seeing Batman on the screen is the Christopher Nolan movies, which I don't understand, really. I guess I understand The Dark Knight because that's the one I've seen the most.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what was happening in The Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight Returns is a whole different thing, which I will talk about.
I'm sorry if you cringe.
No, it's a lot of people do that, and that's partly what I think Christopher Nolan, he was pulling some story elements from there. Zack Snyder did heavily with Batman v Superman. But it doesn't matter if you call it Returns or Rises. It's just...
Well, I mean, the correct name is Rises.
Yeah, so get it right.
No, sorry.
No, I get that. Those movies they're more set in reality, so they try to throw in a lot of real problems and, like, realistic plot lines, I guess I should say, by still taking from comic books and other places and fitting it into a different world. So some of the plot is convoluted because you're playing with fiction and nonfiction and trying to mesh them together. This one was doing the same thing, but I think lends itself more to the comic book side based on who's in the movie.
But still was convoluted.
It was very convoluted. And that part of the problem with that is because, like I said, they were jamming a lot of stuff in the movie. Because they're trying to get to the Justice League, which is what they know everyone is waiting for. We've been waiting for it since, well, I guess forever, because there was supposed to be a Justice League movie in the early aughts. George Miller was set to direct, and then it fell through. I don't think I've really talked to you about that. But, apparently Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern was supposed to be the starting point in that series, and then Green Lantern didn't do well, which sucks because while I know a lot of people don't care so much about the Green Lantern as opposed to the Flash or Aquaman now, I think the Green Lantern's an interesting character, and his powers might not be super cool. Or Adam always brings up that his arch nemesis is the color yellow, and to some point he's right because yellow and green are opposites in this world. The powers of their rings are opposite. So when that movie came out and it didn't do well, the whole timeline was sort of shot, and so DC decided to cool it, and then they went into different places. Then they brought Man of Steel, the Zack Snyder Man of Steel, which was the first in this new line of DC movies, to try to start it up again. And you haven't seen that movie, but
Why
you didn't
really. Why didn't you have me watch it?
Well, you didn't really need to see it to understand what was happening in Batman vs Superman, nor would it have helped, unfortunately.
Okay.
It might have answered a few questions, again, spoilers, but the part with Kevin Costner, just the fact that it was his dad and his dad's dead.
Right.
But really all you needed to see, they had referenced in Batman vs Superman, which was the destruction of Metropolis. Superman and General Zod fighting in Metropolis, destroying buildings and shit. And that was a big focal point for Batman vs Superman, and how Superman's too powerful and all that political shit. But it's a good plot line. They just kind of tanked it with too much extra plot around it.
Yeah, the senator who was going after Superman.
Yeah, and
the guy with no legs, and
yeah,
the Middle East. Something was happening in the Middle East, and something's always happening in the Middle East.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that meant. Like, I get the fact that they set up Superman by bringing, like, Lois Lane there, but why?
And something I agreed with, that I brought up to you at one point, and your answer really didn't satisfy me at all. I was talking about this with somebody. Was, what is Lex Luthor's endgame in this movie? He just wants to destroy Superman. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, what does he get out of it? It's not, if there is an answer, it is not made clear at all.
Yeah. But, I mean, a lot of the questions you had for me, I don't know if I answered properly, because I was still soaking in the movie. And I do want to say that, like, we got there was a line to get into the theater, so we ended up sitting maybe 3 rows, or no, it was probably more like 5 rows from the front.
We were close.
We were super close to the screen, and with the way the screens are, a lot of information was up on the screen on one half of the screen. So, like, you couldn't really soak in everything at one time. You kind of had to shift your attention from left to right, which, believe it or not, does impact how you view the movie and what you are able to attain and whatnot. Not that that was the reason I didn't understand parts of the movie, because the majority of it I do get. There were just, I mean, there's plot holes in the movie that just don't have real solutions or resolutions, that I think are just there to set up the next movie, and what's the point of that? If the movie can't stand on its own, then this is just a plug for your next movie, and that's not, that sucks, because DC is, I'm a huge DC fanboy, but I also, like, understand, DC fanboys, that term has become almost like an insult on any comment section of any topic relating to Marvel or DC, because when people say the word fanboy, they're referring to, like, the people that will, and pardon the French, suck the dick of DC no matter what they do, like, be completely blind to it. Or, like, Batman fanboys will just, like, love Batman, all Batman, no matter what, which I probably come across as sometimes, but I try to do it objectively when there's something, like, I try to focus on why I like a character and what makes me like that character and stick with that view. So if it doesn't go against if it goes against my view, I won't be like, well, that Batman is the best Batman of all. Like I've said, all the other Batmen that have come before, they've been good, but they haven't really been the true interpretation of Batman. And I've told you that many times, I think. But this Ben Affleck's
you
Batman...
felt like this was the closest.
This was the closest. It might not be perfect, but this is the Batman I've been waiting for. There's still improvements that they can do.
And it's not just because it's Ben Affleck and he's in Clerks.
No, he's not in
Clerks. Well, in all those movies.
He's not in all those movies.
In a lot of those movies. In that universe is what I'm getting at.
No, it's not. Maybe initially a little bit, because
he's of the Clerks universe, is what I was implying.
The universe is the proper term.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But no, I think that he's always been a great actor.
Yeah,
people have shit on him. There was that whole time in his career where people were just like, fuck Ben Affleck. But then you watch a movie like Daredevil, which you haven't seen.
Yes, I have.
We watched Daredevil?
We watched that movie.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
Was it like to get you interested in the series or something, or compare them? Or
no, we watched it at your house once.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember a lot. I remember it being like, yeah, that wasn't a very good movie. But
the movie itself isn't good, but Ben Affleck in that movie is good. He shines through, except there was the one scene Bobby and I have talked about where they're on the teeter-totter, or the seesaw, depending on who you ask, but Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck are on the seesaw fighting.
Don't remember, no. Were you waiting to say I remember?
Yeah, no.
I don't remember.
Well, it's fine, because it's just a goofy scene. But, no, that movie is good, but people blame Ben Affleck for it, and I think that's sort of the same thing with Green Lantern and Ryan Reynolds. Green Lantern, the movie sucks, but Ryan Reynolds has some good acting in there. He totally redeems himself in Deadpool, and it's been said that Ben Affleck redeems himself from Daredevil with this Batman. But just the way the character is in the movie is Batman. And it's the Batman I've read in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, the Batman I've seen in the animated series even, because people, like the first day I saw it, the day it came out, I did just be like, this movie was awesome. Of course I said I had problems with it, but I was still like, this movie is great, I'm so excited for the next one. And then the more I thought about it, and the more I read, I started thinking, well, this could be changed, and this could be changed. I mean, we had that whole conversation after the movie, where I was trying to piece it together, because there was just a lot going on.
There was too much. There was too much fat on that movie.
Yeah. And one of the projects I've taken upon myself, because there is a good movie in there. I think there's a great Batman movie in there, but an underdeveloped Superman story. They kind of shoehorned his plot in there. And Man of Steel was a bit the same way. There was a lot of extra stuff that didn't matter, and it wasn't really interesting stuff that they were adding. But I feel like I could cut the movie down to maybe an hour and 20 minutes even, in the style of Batman the Animated Series. And the only reason I say that is because there's a lot of scenes that have that feel to it. Like Ben Affleck and Jeremy Irons, who was Alfred. Mm-hmm. Their dynamic was Batman and Alfred to me. Alfred would say something snarky, and then Bruce Wayne would keep doing Bruce Wayne's thing. Then just some of the visual aspects of the film felt like a comic book. I think that's what Zack Snyder does very well. He sets up the shot. It's visually interesting, but the story is what lacks. Mm-hmm. And the editing was just awful to me.
Yes.
There was a lot of jump cuts, jumping in time, that just, I feel like if you rearrange some of the shots, the story would play better.
I felt like I couldn't relax and enjoy that movie until the last 45 minutes.
Yeah.
When I was like, okay, here's what's going on, here's what's about to happen, and now I can just watch it unfold. Which,
to be fair, is like the entire Batman-Superman fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah. And, that's what the movie says
that's
you're
what
going
I was waiting
to get.
for, yeah.
It comes right out front and says Batman v Superman. So the fight is what everyone's waiting for, but it took 2 hours.
Do you remember when we got to that point, I turned to you and I said, is this almost over?
Yeah.
Because I was finally just starting to get it.
Yeah.
And I felt like we finally got to the point where we should have gotten way earlier, and I couldn't believe that there wasn't a lot left.
Yeah.
Now that I knew what was happening.
I know, and like you could keep Lex in there because I
but
enjoyed.
You still didn't answer my question about him. What does he want?
What does he want? What he's always seemed to want is to bring Superman down.
Why?
Because he sees him as a threat.
I don't buy that, though.
But that's what he's done in the comics. He sees Superman as this all-powerful being.
He's a businessman, isn't he? Does he want money?
He wants
No one wants.
He does. He sees him as evil.
No villain just wants. But he's a villain. Like
but in his mind, he is the good guy.
I don't buy that. He was running some sort of operation in the Middle East.
Yeah, I don't get that part. I have no idea what that means.
I don't think it was just that he. I think there was something else going on.
I'm saying
everyone
in the comic
to be safe.
books.
I just want everyone to be safe.
Mostly, he wants power, which is what he kept mumbling about in the movie. All about power, and knowledge is power, and he sees himself as...
But it wasn't clear in the movie how he was going to get that power by destroying Superman. That was totally unclear.
There was one line that...
But one line does not make it
I
clear.
know, but I'm telling you how it works in the movie. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying. He says, and now God bends to my will. Because Superman is seen as a god, and if you can be more powerful than God, then you have all the power, correct? Would you agree with that?
I'm not religious.
I'm not. It's not about religion. If God is the most powerful being in everyone's mind, then, and you're more powerful than God, would you not say that you have the most power?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what Lex is. He's an egotistical maniac that's like, if I can snap this Superman fella down, knock him down a peg.
Unclear.
I know it's unclear, because it's dismissed in one line, and that's about it. He has a lot of imagery with devils and shit.
I did like all that.
Yeah. But then, the other thing that sucked is they threw another character into the mix, Doomsday, which, to the average moviegoer, means nothing. In the comics, it means something, but they take this monster...
I liked him.
Doomsday?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying you can't like him. I'm just saying they kind of just...
Well, people are like, he shouldn't have been in it.
I'm saying that it was another thing that they tried to cram into the movie. I get why they did it, because there's that whole thing with Lex saying, you know, you can't unring that bell, or like you've made a sound in the universe or something. There's other worlds out there that are hearing us. All that shit. It means that something bigger is going to happen. And I think the audience needed to see Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, who was another character thrown in there.
Who should have gotten way more screen time.
I agree. But they were like, this is how they fight this monster, which is sort of a man-made monster by Lex doing all that shit he did, to set up a future fight with this villain called Darkseid, who is, in some cases, considered the Thanos of DC. Another name that means nothing to you. But
yeah, I'm really a terrible person to have come talk about.
No, because this is exactly why I wanted you here. You represent all of the people that just know the characters Batman and Superman, that are just familiar enough with their names and what they look like, and I want to get your take on it, because I don't know everything there is to know about Superman. I know way more about Batman, obviously, but I would consider myself more of the comic book person between the two of us, clearly. And so we're just comparing notes, essentially. So, yeah, there was a lot thrown into the movie. I mean, you can hear this conversation as an example of how all over the place the movie was, because we've been jumping around from thing to thing just because it's such a jumbled hodgepodge of comic bookness.
Well, and I felt like the characters that, and I said it mid-movie, I was like, I really like that guy. About Lex Luthor, because I felt like he was the character that I got to know the most.
We spent the most time with him.
Yeah, we didn't get enough Superman or Batman.
Well, I'm
or
okay.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, we definitely didn't get enough Wonder Woman, because Gal Gadot, I think, is a great Wonder Woman for the few minutes we've seen her in the Wonder Woman gear.
Is that Gal Gadot?
Gal Gadot, I call her Gal Gadot. I don't know.
You say it like that, and I think that's like a character. That sounds. It sounds like
a
Gal Gadot, like a
Gal Gadot,
like a monster.
Yeah.
And so I get confused when you say it, because I'm like, which character was that?
Gal Gadot. I'll start saying her name correctly.
I don't know if that's how you say it.
I have no idea.
I would assume, but that's just because of waiting for Gadot.
Oh.
Or Gadot, but that some people say Gadot.
Gadot.
It actually might be Gadot in that sense.
I don't know.
Or in that sense.
I'm gonna keep calling her Gal Gadot.
Okay.
Because it makes her sound...
She sounds like a villain.
Yeah. But, yeah, we definitely didn't get enough of her or Batman, which is what everyone was saying. Everyone that liked the movie, because there were a lot of people shitting on the movie. But I get some of their reasoning. And And when the standalone movies come, the standalone Batman movie that Ben Affleck is writing and directing...
He's writing it?
It's said that he's come up with a script for it, and he's a huge fan of the character, so I can trust that he'll get it. He'll take what's been given to him so far and just improve on it. Like what we saw in the movie, there was the Batman that can fight. That whole scene in the warehouse, I thought was the best fighting sequence of any Batman movie. Mm-hmm. Because he literally he was taking on multiple people at once, but using his utility belt, like throwing batarangs and like throwing guys over and pulling like grenades or whatever out of their hands and shit like that. He was using his surroundings as well, which is another thing Batman does that we've never seen to really any degree in any of the other movies. I say this every time, but in Christian Bale's Batman movies, when he's fighting, which probably isn't him, it's probably a stunt double, most of it is like step, punch, block, step, and it looks very choreographed. The idea is to get it to flow smoothly, like in Daredevil. We watched season 1, still have to watch season 2, but that whole scene in the hallway, the scene everyone talks about from season 1, it flowed.
Yeah.
The other reason people talk about it is because it shows the amount of...
It's funny you said that, and I was like, oh no, he's going to make a reference to Daredevil that I don't remember. But I do remember that scene, because I remember us saying that was a really good scene.
Yeah, because it's all one take, and it shows like the wear and tear that somebody who's fighting 20 guys at once goes through. But this isn't Daredevil, this is Batman. So it's also a movie, so it doesn't...
Batman's protecting a whole city, not just an 8-block radius.
Yeah. Which is funny, because like anytime I've seen Daredevil, I've never thought like, oh, Hell's Kitchen. In the comic books, it seems like a whole bigger part of the city. But you're right, it's really just like a few streets, a couple buildings. But
there's a lot of crime.
There's a lot of crime. And high-profile crime in some cases. But this Batman, the fighting style was on point. The one thing people complained about the most, I mean, even people that you talked to, was that Batman kills. Okay? Now, I went back and forth on this from the beginning. I forgave it because I'm like, well, fuck, it's Batman. A lot of people were getting real up in arms that that's not the Batman they want. And
that's not Batman.
That's not Batman at all. But it is Batman. It's just not the Batman that they were expecting. And here's why. See, Batman's notorious for having a no-kill rule. Never mind the fact that in almost every other Batman movie, Batman's killed. Nobody bats an eye to it because it's just like, oh.
No pun intended.
Because it's just like something they understand. Like in Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, Batman kills.
When?
He killed Liam Neeson in Batman Begins. He said, I don't have to save you. Or like, I fucking forget the line, but it's in the climax of the movie when Liam Neeson, Ra's al Ghul is on the subway train, and he's like, I don't have to save you, or I can, fuck it. Basically, he lets him go down with the subway train.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's a death.
But he didn't kill him, though.
Technically.
Technically still not killing him, though.
He killed him indirectly.
He didn't kill him.
He didn't save him.
He didn't save him.
Which is part of the line, but technically, that blood is on his hands, I would say. Because the character Batman arguably wouldn't do that. Arguably. But anyways, because in The Dark Knight, the sequel to that movie, shit's blown up and people are dying, but nobody really sees them, so it's indirect killing. And Zack Snyder came out and said, like, I tried to do it in a technical way, whereas in the Nolan movies, you might not see them die, or like Batman might dodge a rocket, so the rocket hits into a building and the people in the building die. But you don't see it, so you don't consider it Batman killing them or whatever. I can't remember the full quote. So I tried to do it in a technical way, whereas if Batman shot a gas tank and there were criminals around that gas tank, that wasn't Batman that killed them. That was the gas tank explosion. That was what he said. But,
okay.
Yeah. But,
not a very good argument.
I'm not defending that argument. I'm saying that's what was said. But, what are you looking for?
The freeway?
It's probably under the... But see, people don't understand that this is not a Batman that's... This isn't a new Batman. This Batman has history. This is just the first time we're seeing that Batman.
Right.
And the problem with that, to the average person that watches it, or the person that's expecting a Batman not to kill, is that they're like, well, this is, no matter where Batman is in his timeline, he should represent the Batman we all know. This Batman, like I said, was more of a Dark Knight Returns Batman. Based on a few clues in the movie that some shit has happened, at least 18 months between the destruction of Metropolis and this movie starting. There's history. There's Wayne Manor that's burned down that we don't know why. Batman, Bruce Wayne doesn't live there. He chills out in the Batcave mostly, and that other secluded place.
Yeah, he has like a nice little
like spot on the lake, yeah. And you see a suit in the little glass chamber that says, "Ha ha, joke's on you, Batman," written on it in graffiti. Now, I probably already told you this, but what did you think that was when you first saw it?
I just thought it was another one of, I assumed it was another one of his suits.
Oh,
but I knew that was the Joker.
That wrote it. Yeah. Well, the suit best matches a previous Robin, one of his sidekicks, for anyone who didn't know that. I just feel the need to explain, I guess. But in this comic book universe, Robin... Jason Todd, the second Robin, the one that was brought back to bring a sidekick to Batman in the comics, was killed by the Joker in a death in the family. He was actually voted off by the fans. The writers put out a poll, like, if you want to see Robin die, call this number. If you don't, call this number. And he ended up dying. The Joker took a crowbar to him and beat the shit out of him to death. And so that's one of Batman's biggest failures. So he keeps the suit as a reminder, kind of. In The Dark Knight Returns, the whole reason Bruce Wayne takes off like 10 years from being Batman is because he still blames himself for the death of Jason Todd. So that suit in that movie connects the fact that Robin's dead, and this Batman is a little more ruthless, a little more willing to kill, which he does in The Dark Knight Returns. And he uses a gun also in The Dark Knight Returns. He shoots one of the mutants with the machine gun. So, to say Batman doesn't kill is true, but there's an extended sentence that should be added. Batman doesn't kill always. Because he has. Or Batman does kill sometimes. Or Batman has killed before. People forget that.
Like a math class group again.
Well, it's just... like I've always said, like, I love Batman because he doesn't kill, but I don't forget that he hasn't, like, he has killed before. It's just the moral code of not killing sort of came into effect later, and more writers started to keep that as one of the true tendencies of the character. But what's come before that, I mean, he used to carry a gun back in the day. He used to throw criminals off rooftops and shit. Batman's killed, but we kind of push that under the rug because we're more familiar with the Batman that doesn't kill. And that's the hero we kind of want more. So introducing a Batman that's killed and kills is almost, feels to some fans like, well, fuck you. Because this is supposed to be the new Batman. The Batman that's good and that's comic book accurate. Well, it still is comic book accurate, but we haven't seen the history that comes before. And I'm sure in the standalone Batman movie we could get a glimpse of what happens before. We could get one of the other stories that comes before, because the Batman and Superman fight is straight out of The Dark Knight Returns. Him building a suit to fight Superman and all that shit. That's straight from that book. I mean, he has the help of Green Arrow, which would have been cool, but almost another unnecessary thing to add in a movie that's filled with unnecessary things. But there's precedent for it, is what I'm saying. And I don't think we're not going to get the Batman that doesn't kill. In fact, at the end of the movie, because spoilers, Superman dies, he says, I won't fail him, referring to Superman, because this is where he's going to build the Justice League, and he's not going to kill anymore. I mean, I think you look confused.
Wait.
I will not fail him in death, or something like that, he says.
You said this is presumably where he decides not to kill anymore?
Yeah. Well, maybe not that instance, because the instance before...
I thought he had always had that philosophy, but you were saying that with the death of Robin, that went out the door.
Yeah.
So he would be making a transition from not killing to deciding not to kill again?
Yeah, just saying, like, remembering where his past comes from, which ties back into the Superman and Batman fight, which I'm going to talk about now.
Okay.
The Superman and Batman fight, which was probably, arguably, the most interesting part of the movie.
Besides Wonder Woman.
Besides Wonder Woman. I'm not forgetting her intentionally. I have no idea. The whole fight works out perfectly. We see him, work the kryptonite in his lab and try to get it to become this vapor gas type kryptonite. We see, the suit, and then they start going at it. He's like egging him on. I don't know some of the things that Batman does, like why he does it. I figured he would just shoot him with the kryptonite and then fight him. The stuff that led up to it, I'm not sure the inclusion of it unless I saw it again. But the whole thing is, like, Batman gets to the point where he's literally going to kill Superman. He slices his face with that kryptonite spear. And gets to the point where he's going to end Superman's life. And could. But then Superman says, Martha. And that's when the internet exploded.
Yeah.
There's so many memes out there about them.
Because it was kind of a lame reason to stop.
And I said that initially. I said, that sucks because it's kind of an anticlimactic ending. Until I thought about it more.
Until you came up with an excuse?
No, until I connected it to a bigger purpose. There's a difference. Because, like I said, that movie doesn't do well in one sitting. The more you think about it and the more you watch it, the more it makes sense. Which isn't how a movie should work, but that's how this one does. The fact that he says Martha parallels the beginning of the movie when Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father, dies. not only is this a reintroduction to the character Batman, but that inclusion of that beautiful sequence at the beginning of the film, which was just reiterating the fact that Bruce's parents are dead, something a lot of people also complained about, because why do we need to see them die again? Because this sequence is the window to a lot of things that's probably going to happen. One of it being Thomas Wayne's last words are Martha. It reminds Bruce Wayne, Batman, that this is why he started being Batman. That, he didn't want some little boy walking down an alley with his parents, having them die the way his did. He thought this was a chance to fight crime, put an end to the criminal element in Gotham City. And him saying Martha reminded him of that, but also humanized Superman. Like, Superman, this whole movie is portrayed as God. In fact, even the guy that hates Superman, the Legless Joe, I wish I knew his name. Legless Joe. Spray paints like something, false god. Okay. And he has this huge statue, which is in Metropolis, like the savior of the earth, which, again, he can arguably be called. But it humanizes him, saying he has a mother, and he, in his last moment of weakness, latches on to something that we would all do, a loved one. So, I think that's what snaps him out of it. Not just the fact that it's his mom's name, too. If it were someone else...
wait, your mom's name's Martha, too?
Yeah, a lot of the memes out there were like the Step Brothers quote, which is like, did we just become best friends? And then it has their pictures on the Step Brothers poster. But yes, it can be seen as a lame reason, but upon further review, it actually holds weight, like there's substance to it. But right off the bat, it is kind of ridiculous, which I acknowledge. So that fight ends, and then Batman and Superman are now friends, which Batman says. They go to the warehouse where
We're friends now.
Basically, I mean, they go to the warehouse where Martha's being kept, and Batman does that whole fight sequence I talked about earlier. And then they get to the room where Martha is, and there's a dude with a flamethrower, like, I'm gonna kill her, man. Believe me, I'm gonna kill her. And Batman, and I showed you this in The Dark Knight Returns. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same setup. Says, I believe you, and shoots the flamethrower backpack, and the guy explodes, and he covers Martha and protects her. Like, that's parallel to the Dark Knight Returns panel, where I was talking about he shoots the machine gun and kills that one mutant. The difference is it's a child being held hostage, not Superman's mom. But then she's like, she says something like, who are you? And he's like, I'm a friend of your son.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, it felt more like a Ben Affleck thing.
Felt like a Full House moment.
A little bit.
Aww.
Because it honestly, it did feel like a Ben Affleck ad-lib. Because in the comic books and in the cartoons, Batman kind of keeps Superman at arm's length. Like, he knows that they have a professional relationship, but I don't know if he'd ever really consider them friends. But it was just really funny. It was like, yeah, I'm a friend of your son. And then they go back to Lex Luthor, and he's like, well, fuck you guys. If you guys aren't going to kill each other, I'll get the devil to do it. And then Doomsday comes out. Now, the whole fight sequence with Doomsday, I thought was really sweet. You had a lot of, visual elements, like it must have been lightning or fire of some kind going across the screen. It felt like a splash panel right from a comic book. But the part we all saw in the trailer, Batman is in I want to say it's the Batwing, or maybe it's the Batmobile. And Doomsday is like getting ready to fire this huge like fireball at him, and he goes, "Oh shit!" and like tries to shield himself, but then the explosion happens and he's unharmed, and then Wonder Woman, boom, is right there with her shield. So that was her introduction,
which was awesome.
It was very awesome. Even though, like, even having seen the trailers, you hadn't seen really any of the trailers. Even having seen the trailers, it played for me just the same. It's like that was a cool way to bring her character in. Something they could have done earlier, maybe, but whatever. We'll get to that. And then they go into the whole fight, and they're all like, it was kind of similar to the way the fighting style is in Injustice: Gods Among Us, which I know I've talked about it with you, but among all the other things I talk about, it probably just got washed away. A lot of the elements in this movie also pull from that game, kind of, where like Superman's this dictator, and the Justice League has to like fight each other to get in this alternate reality or whatever, gain order back. Some of the elements of the fighting where they're throwing shit to one another and continuing to fight is what Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are doing to Doomsday. And one of the coolest things was Wonder Woman pulled out her lasso of truth and was holding the beast steady. They didn't like have her say, "I'm going to use my lasso of truth," or anything like that. They kind of just cut to a shot of her using it, and that was like, oh shit, because.
Well, I mean, I wasn't like, oh,
no.
lasso of truth. There it is.
Right, but had you known more about the character, maybe. It was a very quick sequence too, and more of the movie should have been like that. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but it was a very good ending to the movie. Unfortunately, the movie ended like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, there were
after that.
A bunch of different endings.
A lot of different places they could have cut, and like the last sequence was the death of Superman, which is another story in the comics that they kind of threw in there. But it's like Lois Lane throws dirt on his grave, or on his coffin, and then for like a split second before the credits, the dirt particles start rising up. Have no clue what that means, whether or not it means
Wait, you don't?
No. I mean, I know he's coming back, but I don't know what that was supposed to, like, why did they rise up? Was that, like, his power coming back to him and, like, he was about to burst out of the coffin or something?
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it means in terms of what's about to happen. I know he's going to come back to life.
Right.
How could he not, with the Justice League right around the corner? But, like, see, that Superman's death thing I would have done after the Justice League, so that it would have been less of a, oh, he's dead, but
he'll be back.
He'll be back. It would have been like, this is like a final moment.
Me not knowing anything about the Justice League, I mean, I assumed he would probably be back, but I didn't know, so it was still sad for me.
Okay, we'll see. That's one of the things I want to know. I guess just from following all the comic book shit, that stuff gets cloudy. Like, or it gets muddled, and like, you start to expect and stuff becomes predictable. But yeah, I think I liked the movie, but there was a lot of problems with it. And if I could cut it down myself, I could fix some of it. I'm just going to pause this here. I'll cut this out. We're almost done.
I don't mind. Keep going longer if you want.
Well, we're at an hour, so...
We are?
Okay, I do. So yeah, I it definitely had some problems, but I do think like there's a good story somewhere in there.
Yeah.
If it were just cut down, and hate saying that, like, I want to recut it because it makes it sound like, oh, I could do better than Zack Snyder, somebody who's an accomplished director. But I think for me to enjoy the movie more, I would need to see a version, that's cut down. I hate it when movies are too long, like unnecessarily long, because there's a lot that can be cut out, and if you cut it out and make it an hour and a half or even just an hour long, you can get more viewings in, it's more enjoyable, concise.
It didn't feel like it was so long to me. It just felt like there was too much.
Well, see, I think they go hand in hand. I mean, it felt long to me, but because there's so much in it. Like, you could cut that movie down to a very simpler 3 acts. Introduce Batman's conflict with Superman, the fact that he was in Metropolis. I would keep the whole beginning sequence because it was beautiful, I thought. Like the death of Wayne's parents. The way it was shot, not the actual death of his parents. Mm-hmm. Like, introduce the conflict that Batman hates Superman. Then introduce Lex Luthor.
Which made me think it was SNL.
SNL. I'm gonna go see Batman hates Superman, yo. Bobby Moynihan. Introduce Lex Luthor and his concerns in the same act. Then have the fight with Batman and Superman in the middle, like having the first part of the second act be Batman preparing to fight Superman, having the second half of Act 2 Batman fighting Superman, and have the third act be the Doomsday fight.
Yeah.
And then the death of Superman.
But then what would you do with all that politics and stuff?
Get rid of it. I don't necessarily think it all needs to be in this movie. You could shoehorn it into Man of Steel by cutting some shit out of Man of Steel and throwing that in there to set up Batman vs. Superman. That would be another project. I think, because, even though the timeline's a little screwy, you could get rid of that 18-month lull by taking all of the politics and putting it into Man of Steel. Well,
why couldn't Superman hear that there was a bomb in the courtroom?
Good question.
Starting to bring up my points that
you have points? I thought this was just the Matt Danko show.
Well, I only have 2 things I want to
No, that's a good point. I don't know why you didn't hear it. I could understand him not seeing it if Lex lined the wheelchair, because it was Lex Luthor gave that to Legolas Joe. So I could see him lining it with lead. Whether or not that was made clear in the movie is probably not there. Like, he probably never said, like, this lead-lined wheelchair is good or some shit. I don't write these movies. Clearly, I just want to edit them again, not rewrite them. But, yeah, I don't know why he didn't hear it, because he can hear everything. Unless he was just so focused on... See, but that's me making shit up. Trying to connect the dots that might not be there. Because Superman's lazy. He was not doing his job. Because I feel like Batman would have heard it.
Nah, you're biased, though.
Yeah, I know. But... in all fairness, Batman has a contingency plan for pretty much everything. There's moments in the comic books where he's like, Alfred, I think I'm thinking too much about thinking. I think I gotta think less. And Alfred's like, yeah, you probably should. But then he's like, I'll never do that.
More.
Who, Alfred?
Yeah.
I really do like their dynamic. I like the fact that he was in the Batcave working on the suit, like, doing his job. which is a lot of what... I mean, Christopher Nolan's Alfred did that, Michael Caine, but I think it was a lot less. He helped him build the suit and order the parts from all different places, but it looked like Alfred was actually engineering some shit in the Batcave, which the guy's just a butler, but in the comics he does that sort of thing. He sutures Batman when he's been shot, when he has stab wounds. He's his right-hand man. And it really, a lot of the Batman stuff was very accurate, I thought. Like, I could talk about that forever. He was the Batman that we've been wanting to see. The only other thing I think that some of us want to see, not that I want to see Batman killed, but I understand it. The only other reason it's not cool is because it almost, his reason for killing is almost hinging on an Easter egg, if anything, like a reference. There's no explanation of it. There's a shot for anyone who doesn't know what that suit is or its purpose. Batman just kills in this universe. There's no like, oh, that's Robin, and Robin's dead, and this is why Batman kills, because he doesn't give a fuck. This is just a Batman that kills, and a lot of people probably see it that way. But I will say that the fact that Wayne Manor's burned down, and the way the suit looks, the Robin suit, they're connected somehow. And he does look to it as a failure. And so, like that, everything I said before.
There is definitely a standalone Batman to come.
Yeah, that's been confirmed.
Okay.
Yeah. And even in the Suicide Squad, which is coming out, the reason for Jared Leto's Joker's teeth, like the metal in his teeth that people have called grills, is because he's been beat to shit by Batman. Like, his teeth have literally fallen out. So there's history there too. A lot of this is hinging on the fact that it will be explained later, which can work, but also hurt the movie when it needs other movies to support it. The Marvel movies don't really need that. They set up their other movies, but they're great standalone movies. Like Iron Man, I think you and I should watch Iron Man, not just because it's the first movie in the series and like it sets everything up, but it's a very well put together movie, and Jon Favreau directed that movie. You'd know his face. He was in I Love You Man. He was like the guy that didn't want to be friends with Paul Rudd. That was like their wives were friends.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Jon Favreau was in that movie, and he's the one who got Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, because he like stood up and said, this is who I want Iron Man to be. This is Tony Stark. Make it so. And like, that was one thing that he wasn't backing down on. And now everyone looks at Robert Downey Jr. and they can only see Tony Stark. And without that, I mean, a lot of the other stuff probably wouldn't be as good as it is. They would have done well with it, but that was a very strong starting point. Whereas in DC's universe, Man of Steel wasn't, unfortunately. But what was your other point you wanted to bring up?
I think you should address the daydreaming /
the nightmare sequence?
Yeah.
And the other thing? Well, okay.
Because it's still not clear to me.
And again, the more I thought about it and the more I read about it, the more it makes sense. But again, it's also only there to set up other shit. Potentially. Like, everything I'm saying right now, the fact that like there's all these other things to come, other than the Batman movie and the Justice League movie, it's all conjecture, it's all speculation, because they could just say fuck it and not do that. They could never explain why the Robin suit is there. They would be foolish not to address it, but they very well could just skip it altogether, and then the movie universe would never really explore those keystones of the Batman mythos and the DC universe as a whole, which would suck, but, you know, DC has made some pretty bad calls in the past, so, they're not DC, but, well, see, it's hard to know who to refer to when you're talking about the movies, because while it is a DC property, it's Warner Brothers are the people making it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. But yeah, the nightmare sequence, it was like a post-apocalyptic metropolis in Gotham, and there's all these like soldiers that are working with Batman, and then there's all these soldiers working for Superman, and Superman's sort of like this, well, he really steps into the god role, I think, like the dictator god. And like Batman strolls up to this car that presumably Kryptonite is in. He opens up the case, but there's just like a bomb in it or something, like green lights and shit. And it's a setup of some kind. And then Superman's goons capture Batman, and Batman's like killing, snapping necks and shooting people. And then there are these winged creatures in these like mech suits that come in and start taking like hostages or whatever. And then Batman's captured. Superman uses his heat vision on the two guys Batman's captured with, pulls the mask off of Bruce Wayne, and says something about Lois.
She was everything to me.
Yeah.
Something like that.
She was my world or something like that. And then presumably kills Batman, but then he wakes up, and that's the end of the sequence. It kind of happens very abruptly in a weird place in the movie. Literally, Bruce Wayne is waking up.
I had no idea that it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I thought this was happening.
Yeah. Because in the timeline of the movie, I think, like...
There's nothing that makes it clear that this is a nightmare.
Yeah. Well...
Until the end.
Yeah. And I think part of that is because, like, did you understand that it was an apocalyptic city? Not that it was towards the end, but, like, that was Metropolis or Gotham. Did it just look like the Middle East?
Honestly, I don't remember what I was.
There was a bunch of sand around. So that compared to the shot or the scene prior in the Middle East, one could easily be like, well, this is just another part of the world happening at this moment, not a dream or anything. But the whole point of that scene in this movie seems to be like, this is what would happen. This was what would drive Batman to ending Superman. Like, Superman, if things play out the way they're playing out, Superman will become all powerful, start controlling the Earth, and Batman's one mission, like, he'll kill to get Kryptonite just so he can stop Superman. Like, that's what it kind of plays as when you watch the movie. And then he wakes up and it plays more like this is his internal struggle of, like, what he needs to do next with Superman. But you were just confused by the whole thing.
Then the Flash is there.
That's the second part later.
Oh my god.
I know. But that's in the context of this movie, I think, is how it plays. When you actually look at all the clues in that scene, there's like a huge symbol carved into the ground, the Omega symbol, and then those winged creatures are parademons, which mean nothing to anyone who's just going to see a Batman vs. Superman movie, but could mean everything to the comic book nerd that's sitting in the chair watching it. It opens up a storyline for Darkseid, that Thanos character I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. But also that this is almost an alternate reality of Earth 1, if you can call it that. and I mentioned this to you sometime before, but I'll get into it in a second, about the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Does that ring a bell?
I know it's a name of a comic book.
Yes. One I've been trying to get, but I just haven't bought it.
On like different timelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember talking about this.
So it seems like there was some theory I read online that makes sense with the scene that comes after, like later in the movie with the Flash. But like this is a timeline that exists on another Earth that's actually he's almost like having it flashback in his head. Something that hasn't happened to him that might take place in the future, but all these universes are snapping in on themselves. So the original version of that character, like the original Bruce Wayne, is getting all the ripples of that time effect. So it's a time travel thing that might not make sense to anyone who doesn't.
That maybe necessarily didn't quite fit in the movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't fit in this movie other than to set up something else.
Okay.
Because later, Bruce Wayne is at his computer and falls asleep or something, and is it that same? There were like 2 dream sequences that happened together.
Well, doesn't Flash pop out of his computer?
Yeah. But like, there were like...
I had no idea what's the Flash. I was like...
It was very hard to see. Maybe the sequence does come then, but I thought it came earlier when he was in bed with that girl. At the lake house. There's like a dream sequence, and then we think he's awake, but then there's another dream sequence, and then he actually wakes up. Like when the Flash appears, that's like a second dream sequence that we think is happening right now, but then he snaps out of it again. So I can't remember the dream sequence that comes before that. Saying that too much.
Let's see the movie again.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like...
We really need to see it again.
I'm doing this all from memory, and it's very hard.
Should have taken notes.
I should have, yeah. I didn't really expect this many things to happen in this movie.
I should have taken notes, and we should have written a Batman story based on the notes that I took, because it probably would have been a whole different story.
But, yeah, the Flash comes into play. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. We might have to do that. The Flash, like...
Batman was walking down the street.
He pops out of the computer and talks to Bruce Wayne like, she's the key, Lois is the key, and then says like, am I too soon? I'm too soon. And then Bruce Wayne pops out of that dream sequence. Supposedly, that ties in to the nightmare sequence. Lois, something happens to Lois that causes Superman to fuck shit up.
Whose character was just kind of annoyingly there in this
The Flash?
movie. No, Lois.
Lois. Yeah, she was in Man of Steel, obviously, but she was kind of like just into this one. In fact, she was pretty useless in this movie. Everything that happened was her fault. The reason like Superman is in the Middle East and is set up by Lex Luthor is because she's there. Like, she was sent there to be saved by Superman for some reason that still escapes me. And then towards the end of the movie, she throws away the kryptonite spear. And then, based on something I think Batman says, is like, yeah, kryptonite would work on this Doomsday guy. And then she's like, oh, let me just go get that. And then goes to get it.
I can see why she threw it away.
Yeah. But did she have to do that?
Well, if she's thinking, I gotta get rid of this so nobody uses it against my boyfriend, like...
Was that what she was thinking?
That's what I thought.
I feel like, yes, she was throwing it away because kryptonite is bad for Superman. But she didn't need to do that. He was far enough away from it that, like, and Lex Luthor was nowhere around.
I know, but what if Batman had changed his mind and come back for it?
Changed his mind after they became best friends.
I'm just saying.
He didn't kill him in that moment, he wasn't going to kill him after that moment.
Well, she doesn't know that.
I knew that.
But she doesn't know that.
I just feel like she was... But when she goes to get it, she gets trapped under all that rubble. Granted, it's not her fault.
If somebody pulled a gun on you and you convinced them not to shoot you, and then they walked away and they left the gun,
okay,
I'm going to take the gun and I'm going to hide it somewhere because I don't want them to change their mind and come... not even if to change their mind. If there's a gun there, I know it can hurt you.
Okay.
I'm going to get rid of it. I'm not just going to be like, I'll leave it there for when he comes back.
But with all the other shit that's happening, I think that would be the least thing on my mind.
Well, she's not going to go fight anybody. She's just a little woman.
But Wonder Woman...
She's just a little woman like me.
Okay, you make a good point. I feel like it was kind of like she was throwing it away and then immediately realizes that was a shitty idea. Like, immediately.
Yeah.
And she was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
We'll give her some credit. She is, like, the damsel in distress character.
That's what I'm saying.
She has one moment of strength, and this is it, where she gets to make a decision to try and save...
Yeah.
Where she gets to save Superman, supposedly.
But then it immediately is followed up by the fact
but
that
she doesn't know that, though.
I'm not saying she has to know that. I'm saying in terms of the writing of the story. If that's her one decision to, like, save Superman, which I can agree with, why is it followed up by her getting trapped by rubble again? And drowning almost. Or no, she does kind of drown, and then Superman pulls her out. It happened so quickly. I would have given her a stronger moment to be a Wonder Woman of the humans. I don't know. But there was another thing I was talking about. The Flash. That's how we got there. The whole... I mean, Lois is, Lois is to Superman as... I was going to say Martha is to Bruce Wayne, but that's not right. Because Martha to Superman is what Martha is to Bruce Wayne. She's like, he would do anything for her. We don't have a parallel with Batman, but the whole reason he becomes too powerful and it was like, I'm gonna reign over everyone on Earth because she's dead, in this alternate reality, is what causes Flash to come back and tell Bruce Wayne, like, you need to watch out, fear him, like, be careful. And Lois is the key. And all of this stuff is just setting up something that's going to happen later. Whether or not fear him was an allusion to Superman or an allusion to Darkseid, nobody can really know for sure.
He says fear him?
He says, I'm pretty sure he says fear him. He says, I'll try to pull up a link to it later and link it with this podcast, but it's like, fear him, Lois is the key, and then he's like, am I too soon? And then he's like, yeah, based on your confused face, I'm too soon, and like, pops out. Not only was it weird, you couldn't really tell it was the Flash. I mean, I could because,
it looks like a guy in a bike helmet to me.
Well, the design of the Flash suit, he does kind of wear like that kind of goggle style helmet thing, but it looked less like a costume and more like a helmet. Like even in the Flash television show, it's kind of a balance of both, where it's part of the suit, but it's also like a helmet. And the only other thing I'll say is that the introduction to every other member of the Justice League was also unnecessary.
And very brief.
Very brief.
So much so that I didn't catch it. Well,
it was very brief and it was very long at the same time. Because there's like 4 files that are on the computer.
I guess I meant brief because
you didn't.
He looks at all the files and then nothing is done about it. Like, it's just over.
Well,
there's nothing,
yeah.
like, oh, that must mean blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no
connection.
He didn't connect the dots for me.
Right. Well,
I thought that was Wonder Woman in all the pictures.
You did.
Well, in a couple of them.
In the first one, the Flash file, you're like, that was a man. Is that? And I was like,
oh my God, she used to be a man.
It wasn't clicking to me what you were saying until later. You were like, I thought that was her, like, through each time period, like, changing her face or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I could see the way it was presented.
I'm stupid.
No, you don't really know the characters, but each file had its own symbol, and each symbol was a reference to that character. That, I think they could have just shown all the files with all the symbols, just opened the Wonder Woman file, and not opened any of the other ones. Because I think it would have worked better for the audience, being like the audience that would recognize those symbols. Seeing the Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, instead of seeing like these 5-minute long clips of each character and then nothing. I think that's the moment where the Flash pops in, like it's around that moment where he pops into, like the dream happens.
No.
No? It's not?
No, that happens much earlier.
The files? Oh, when...
The files happen after he pops in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, still. Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know. It was cool to see the fact that those characters are happening, and obviously they're going to happen in the Justice League movie. I just think it was almost a wasted introduction. But it definitely, weirdly enough, got me excited for the Aquaman movie.
I don't remember what was happening in his clip.
It was a military clip of like it almost looked like it was a sunken ship, I think, and he was like popping out of it, and he had those like trident, and the camera was like right there on him, and he was just staring at it, and then he like stabs it with the trident, and it shuts, like the feed gets canceled. It was very quick, but it's just seeing Aquaman on screen was cool because Aquaman's the character everyone likes to shit on. And I think this is going to be the time where Aquaman rises from the sea and, like, kicks ass. I don't know. I really dig underwater movies, so not that his whole movie will be underwater, but a lot of, like, his world is underwater. And he can control sea creatures. He can, like, ride a shark. That'd be sweet. They do reference that in Man of Steel, kind of. Not him riding a shark, but Superman, like, falls into the ocean and is, like, unconscious, and then 2 whales, like, pop up, like, slowly to see if he's alright, kind of. And people think that that's, like, Aquaman sending them to, like, check on him. Mm. But, I don't know. Overall, what did you think of the movie?
There was too much going on.
Too much going on?
Yeah.
And it was hard to follow?
I liked Batman.
Right.
I liked Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It was hard to follow until the last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
For me.
No, I agree with that. I love Batman.
But I was interested in it the whole time.
Like
it kept me interested.
There's a good movie somewhere in there.
Yeah.
You just need to cut it to find it. And I know we didn't really talk about it, and we've been going on for so long, and my voice is kind of shot. But, like the whole Lex Luthor portrayal by Jesse Eisenberg, I liked it a lot.
I did too, but I mean, granted, I didn't know any other Lex Luthor, so.
I mean, a lot of people were expecting the Gene Hackman or Kevin Spacey Lex Luthor, the bald businessman that's like tall and acts like a businessman. This guy was kind of, he was a lot younger.
He was the creator of Facebook.
Exactly. That's what a lot of people said. They felt like they just threw the creator Facebook and turned up his insanity a little bit. But I think that's why he was chosen for the role, because he can play those egotistical characters. And Lex Luthor is an egotist because he thinks he's better than Superman and deserves all the power. I don't know why they shaved his head. I thought he was being executed.
Me too.
We thought that when they started shaving his head and he was being put in a cell, but no. Just
Keep
I
it
guess take some hair off, just a quick buzz. I did like the end when Batman shows up to a cell. That was sweet.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I forgot what he says though.
I don't remember if Batman says anything. I mean, I feel like he does, but what stuck out to me was how he was branding criminals before.
Oh yeah, and then
he doesn't.
Yeah.
And puts it in his cell. That was sweet. That's also another clue that Batman's not as ruthless as he used to be. Like, I don't think the Batman that everyone was expecting would brand criminals, because although they say it in the film, like, he brands, like, rapists and, like, child abusers and shit like that. And when they're branded in prison, it's, like, a death sentence. Like, because everyone knows that they've done some shit, and they're the lowest of the low. And I think Batman knew that. But this time, when he, like, granted, Lex Luthor isn't as bad, I guess, comparatively.
He could have signed Lex Luthor's death warrant by putting that.
Yeah, on him. But he misses. Well, he doesn't miss. He intentionally puts it into his cell wall to be like, not only is this a reminder to you, like, you better watch out, but, like, it's also a signal to the audience that, like, he's not going to be the Batman he used to be, or that he was for a short time, which is good. I also didn't touch on the Bruce Wayne part. I talked mostly about the Batman part. But we've gone on for so long. I'm sorry.
No, you're not very sorry.
It's just everything about his portrayal of the character was good. Even when, he's at the party, and Bruce Wayne's at the party, and he's talking to one of Lex Luthor's workers. I don't even know what to call her, because I don't remember her name. But I feel like she has a relevance.
The Asian lady?
Yeah, she has a relevance probably into the comics based on her name. It was like some unique name that wasn't like a normal side character name. It was probably a reference.
Remember.
Anyway, he pretends he's drunk and is like, I was just looking for the bathroom, and like Bruce Wayne, the playboy philanthropist, is supposed to be the clueless, like, playboy philanthropist. Like, that's an act, so that he can still operate and do the things he needs to do, and nobody suspects that guy to be Batman. But I don't know, everything about the Batman aspect of this movie I will always defend as being the best Batman there is, live action wise. Mm-hmm. I think the animated series is probably my favorite Batman, though. And speaking of animated movies, DC and Warner Brothers, there was talks about doing The Killing Joke, the comic. They released a preview online of what it's going to look like a short 30-second trailer. Oh. And Mark Hamill is returning as the Joker, and Kevin Conroy as Batman. And it looks pretty sweet. So, yeah. Other than that, I think I'm all Batman and Superman out. I was getting really sick of talking about it for the many days, because everyone was just shitting on it and other people were defending it, and I was trying to do both, like, objectively, like being like, this is what works, this is what doesn't, this is why I like it, this is what could be better. And finally we got to do a podcast on it so that it's on the record and I can stop talking about it, because it's run me ragged. I didn't even get to talk about Deadpool as much. And, like, I feel like I've never talked about a movie as much as I've talked about Batman vs. Superman. But
you've really let it affect you.
Because it's, not only is it Batman, but it's a stepping stone for DC. And it's one that could have been better. But I don't know whose fault. I can't really blame Zack Snyder for it, because there's elements he's included that I love. But I don't know. It's hard to hear, like, when people shit on Kevin Smith. Like, obviously I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. It's hard to let those comments go without saying something. Most of the time I do, because a lot of people just are relentless online. But this was something that I feel like it could have been a turning point for DC's movies. It could have been all these other things. And the majority, there's a lot of people that love it, but the majority say that it's not good. And I don't know. For the people that do love it, I'm glad they love it. Like, they love it uncontrollably, unconditionally. And that's where the movie's heart is. It's in the audience, which is something Kevin Smith brought up. And the more reactions I saw from people online, like, the more I read their paragraph-long reasons why they love it, like, I can see why this movie is important. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not, as a movie, it's not great. As a Batman vs. Superman tale, it might be alright, but it meant something to people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what matters. Which is why everyone loves Marvel movies. Because they're fun and they're family and they're entertaining. But, like, those are characters people have been waiting to see forever. That's why parents can take their kids to it, because they grew up reading those comics and their kids are probably interested in those characters based on all the cartoons that are out there. And it's just, I don't know, it's something. Granted, this isn't a family-friendly movie, I would say.
No.
But, whew, alright. Any last words for this?
I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in this solo Batman movie. The Justice League 2-part movie will be interesting. The Wonder Woman movie will be good, I think. And the Aquaman. I'm not so much into the Flash. But if they do a Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, and they pull in their TV shows, which they've been keeping separate, to kind of, like, Marvel connects everything that they do, television shows and movies together. DC has been kind of keeping their television shows separate. So if this Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline plays out, they could have the Flash from the television show up with the Flash from the movie universe in, like, a scene or something, so that they can, like, the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics was to shut down all these multiple Earths, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, all these different worlds where all these characters exist, and just bring back the continuity of one Earth. They could do that, the movies, so that the series on the television shows can end or keep doing their own thing, unrelated to the movies, but still acknowledging that they're part of the DC incredible universe, I guess I could call it. But if they do that, I want it on record that I called it. But I guess that's it. I'm tired. Really drains me. But yeah, so thank you, Jesse, for putting up with all this rambling and nonsense about Batman vs. Superman, not just on this podcast, but for the last...
It's my pleasure. I had fun.
2 weeks it's been going on. Alright. So, thank you for listening to the Matthew Danko podcast.
Don't call it that.
I'm your host, Matthew the Dr. Danko.
And I'm Jesse.